This is well done for a 27 billion parameter model, and the flight logic actually works. Carpaccio. We do not cook, we excavate. While I am hesitant to call anything a part 2, today's video is going to be somewhat of a continuation of yesterday's, where we're going to be looking at the 2 new additional family members in the Qwen3.5 family. First off, we have a 35 billion parameter MOE model with 3 billion active parameters. And then following that, somewhat interestingly, at least to me personally, is the 3.5 27 billion parameter dense model. So it's interesting to see a dense model, being that every other release in this 3.5 family so far have been MOE except this one, and I do have to say that I've seen some examples of things people have hypothetically made with that model, and some of its capabilities do seem to be rather potent. So I'm very excited to try these, and because these are relatively close in terms of, I guess, footprint with a big asterisk next to that, I do want to test them on the same exact prompts, because I know it can be kind of difficult sometimes to conceptualize what exactly the difference is going to be between these models, being that, oh, 35B and then there's a 27B right there, but then the MOE obviously changes things because the number of active parameters for this 35B is far less than this dense 27B. So I think giving a head-to-head visually based comparison of their performance is something a lot of folks, myself included, will find interesting. Now, I don't want to spend too much time before we just jump into the video talking about these specific models, and essentially I can click on any one of these Hugging Face model cards here, and we'll see the highlights are, of course, mainly that these now have inbuilt vision capability. Instead of having a separate model family for vision language models as Qwen previously did, these can handle it all, which is really cool. They also do have the hybrid architecture, so hypothetically, they can handle longer contexts with a smaller VRAM footprint than historically with a previous non-hybrid architecture like this. Now, something I know I'd seen a few questions in the comments in my previous video testing 122B. I do want to mention I was using the suggested sampling parameters when we were doing coding tasks versus just like asking it funny things with pictures that we sent it, just based off of what we see here in these Unsloth AI recommended sampling parameters, depending on specific tasks of general tasks or specifically coding. So with that, we're going to now just hop into LM Studio. I am using the DGX Spark here, and in terms of the specific models we're going to be using for the 3.5 35A3B, I'm using this LM Studio Community Quant right here, and that's what I have loaded in at Q8 quantization because I am using the DGX Spark. I went back and forth on doing these in Q4, but I want to see a little more performance out of them, so I figured Q8 is better, and I'm also just going to be using the 27B as well, either the Unsloth Quant for the 27B, which is probably what I'll use, but I did also pull the LM Studio Community one as well. So with that, I have the 35B A3B loaded in now, and we're going to start with our first test. So I've sent this our browser OS test v2, where it needs to make 5 specific applications. 2 of them must be games, the ability to change wallpaper, and then a special feature that it decides upon and implements itself. And something else we're going to notice additionally to just comparing the outputs of these one by one is the speed differential. So they are both at a Q8 quantization, but we should expect to see the 35B A3B model running a bit faster at the minimum than the dense 27B will. And we received our response at a total speed of 46 tokens per second. So I'll make sure that I mention the speed of either of these models, as it will be of interest to folks who want to see how they differ. So first up, our 35 billion parameter MOE browser OS. Not bad. This is fairly clean. It is showing the correct time in my locale. I do see at least 5 applications here, perhaps even 6. Let's check the right click. Okay, sadly there is no right click capability, but I want to then just check the start menu, as this was actually good. This was not implemented the first time I tried it yesterday with the 122B, which was just very odd. This fortunately does have it, and okay, good. You have to just kind of like click it again to get it to go away, which is fine. We'll start just going down the list. Not bad. Standard, the UI looks good. Can I resize? I can, so that's nice to see, and not something that we always get. Can we minimize to the taskbar? We can't. Can I full screen? I can't, and if I close, I notice perplexing behavior, so check this out. If I close the Notepad app, it just closes the actual menu bar over the app instead of the app window itself. I don't know that I've never seen that before. Very unique take on the close button. So, okay. Do we have a functioning terminal? Type help. Very good. So date. Very good. That is correct. Reboot. cool. And it just reboots the system. And then the final command there was just clear, which would clear the previous command. So very good. Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, except for that. So next up, the Snake Master proceeds. Well, I'm sorry that folks will not get to witness my insane snake skills today due to the fact that that doesn't seem to work. Though we do have Clicker Sim, which is our next game. Oh, wow. Okay, this doesn't look like a virus pop-up. Click me. Buy 50. I can buy an auto clicker for 50 credits, which will then hypothetically click for me. We're going to have to try this. The moment of truth. Let's now see if we can actually buy this auto clicker. Auto clicker purchased. Power increased. Oh, so the auto clicker gives me more credits per click. I can see why these games are like used for like just for old people to get addicted to them. That's messed up, but you know what I mean. So with that, good, very good. Ugh, disgusting orange. But the rest of these are quite nice. I do have to say I'm normally kind of like a blue kind of guy, but I kind of am digging the green here, so I'm cool with that. And then finally, oh yeah, because we can't actually close out of it. We'll just move it over to the side. And then the other thing here, of course, is our system settings. Toggle system instability glitch mode. Okay, now this is a disclaimer. These often can make really weird looking visual artifacts that just be aware that that may be seen now. That's just awful. Although, I kind of just like have a meeting with someone, be like, oh yeah, welcome. And then just have this in the background as the system and pretend like it's nothing weird to me. I've now loaded the 27B dense model in and sent it the same prompt, so we'll see how they do compared to one another. And on first glance, we're going to notice the speed of this one is significantly slower just due to the architectural differences between the two models. All right, so our 27B model at Q8 finished in 7.5 tokens per second, which is incredibly slow. Bit slower than I'd anticipated, so I will allocate some more time for this video than one had expected. All right, so we have Nexus OS. Everything looks somewhat similar. Let's just make sure. Okay, so no right click, which would have been probably one of the main differentiators here. We do have a clock and we do have a start button. Interesting. This is a much uglier start button than what we received with the MOE model. So let's go down the list and take a look at our applications. Okay, so far I'm noticing, I'm almost wondering, I mean, I double checked the sampling parameters are set exactly the same for the suggestions when doing coding between the two models we showcase. So I'm interested that this is significantly worse. 52 times 6, 312 divided by 9, 20 something plus 14.6. Very good. So with that, let's check our settings. Okay. Can we change our wallpaper? We can. Good. Pacific Northwest is also there. Ooh, and then we have this Apple style one, which, hold on a second. Chrono Shift Engine. Switch between design areas. Modern glass default. What if I click Retro 95 style? Spot on. That's actually, all right. Does the start menu look better there? It does. So I almost feel like the start menu had to be kind of nerfed to allow this simple Retro 95 style switching. But I am overall actually kind of impressed. We can resize. Let me change this to perhaps a more suitable wallpaper for this Windows 95 style. I like that. I'm quite pleased with this special feature ability, assuming that is the special feature, it must be. So let's try our retro snake game in Windows 95 style. And if you recall previously in the 35 billion parameter model, the snake game didn't work. This one does, kind of, because the logic's not quite perfect, because that was not a fail. That was just, I was close to the bounds, but I didn't hit them, so. All right, well, regardless. Then we have Clicker Tycoon. Click me. This one has monetary, like, okay, wow. Very interesting. That was an interesting, the UI in the 35B definitely looked better, though I would say the functionality in this one was better, being that it did implement a functioning snake game, and our special feature was definitely much cooler, as opposed to the glitch aesthetic that we got with the other one. So Very interesting. Even it's going as far as changing the font for the specific icons. Very cool. Now let's try the wireframe portfolio test here using the 35 billion parameter MOE. Of course, we're using this with the Stevie Slappis portfolio image and just telling it to turn this wireframe into a beautiful and modern tech portfolio website. And the speed differential again is quite noticeable. All right, so let's take a look at our 35 billion parameter MOE Stevie Slappis portfolio. Very interesting. I have seen this specific photo used for the Stevie Slappis portfolio website before, so that is quite something. Now, we have some contact information here, San Francisco, so that is pretty fitting. Okay, whoops. I clicked the email by accident. Also, a GitHub. It did properly kind of adhere to what we saw. I will say this is better off the bat than the initial result we received with the 122B model in yesterday's video. However, I want to just give it a little feedback. And maybe we'll look into the chain of thought as well. The user is unhappy. I need to pivot. Critique, generic look, and remember, these are critiques that it's coming up with itself, being that I didn't say anything other than this being garbage. Layout rigidity, lack of wow factor. Very good. I've started the 27B model on this same test, but in the meantime, let's go and look at the second iteration we received from the 35 billion parameter. Okay, I do kind of like, I will say this is a significant improvement, at least in terms of my subjective take on what this looks like. It did use the same photo, it just did add a little more pop and wow factor, but everything stayed relatively the same in terms of the formatting and the side. I do like the S_Lapis_. I'm cool with this and the way it made it green here. This is definitely, if we are to look at them side by side, considering the other model is going to take a while to finish this test, this was a relatively nice improvement in the quality of the result. Now I swapped this Quant because in the meantime, while that was generating, I was doing some research and I found that someone identified a bug in one of the quantizations from Unsloth for the 35B MOE model, which we're not using that Quant in this testing, but I did a little more research, and while I did not verify, I did take a quick peek to see if the model we used, which was the 27B Unsloth Quant for the previous few tests in this video, or the browser OS test only, I wanted to just make sure, and I didn't see any specific issues in when I looked in here, which is something you can actually do. So essentially the issue that was identified, I suppose if we are to be a little more proactive in showing it, if we click on this quantization right here, we're going to be able to see some more specific information about this. And if we scroll down right here, we're going to see that the MXFP4 precision is found here in this Q4KXL quant, and that's essentially was pointed out as this should not be here. So there was potentially a bug with this, and while I didn't notice any issues like that with the dense 27 billion parameter model that we had run the WebOS test with, I just felt it was probably better to swap over to the LM Studio Community Quant. Alright, so we did receive our result from the 27 billion parameter dense model, and interestingly, it's actually giving us some information following the script as well, and the total speed was 7.2 tokens per second, so pretty slow. Instead of drawing a literal snake in the code, which is hard, I put your profile picture inside a circle with a glowing border. It must have thought there was it thinks that is a snake, I think. Regardless, it would identify then the snake master himself. So let's take a look at this, and we'll see how it did with the first result that we received from the 35B MOE. Okay, that's very interesting. It does have hover effects. I'm going to say that, are we to compare these just one-to-one, this was the first result we received from the 35B MOE model. I would say this is a significant improvement, even if it's, well, it's tough because this did have like a hero section with the image. But overall, I'd say this one shows better architectural choices, I suppose could be said. So interesting just to see the comparison, but this did actually understand Stevie instead of TV. So interesting to see the differences. For this next test, I want to do the flight combat simulator result, and I have seen some really impressive results that folks have said they've received with the 27B dense model, so we're going to begin with this model, also because it will take significantly longer to complete this task than the 35B MOE. So we've received our flight combat simulator result for the 27 billion parameter dense model, and before we even test this, I've decided I will give them each a chance to fix any results that they generate that may have issues. Okay, so I do see some clouds in the background. Sky Ace. Let's just see. Very, very interesting that this actually produced a fully functional result in the first try. When the quantization The model yesterday didn't. I have made a pinned comment on that video just referencing that there may have been some quantization issues there. But this is pretty impressive to see. Keep in mind this was on Q8, and this isn't perfect because we've kind of flown outside the bounds of the map, and I don't offhand see a way to get back to the map. But I was watching it when it was coding, and it mentioned this Apache helicopter, which is rare to see. It even does have a rotor. This is well done for a 27 billion parameter model, and the flight logic actually works. I was watching it generate code, and it did kind of mention that it could make effects for if you lost. However, the issue, and this is sometimes what happens with the less capable models, is that the enemy planes just kind of snap to your location because the logic is written so simply that it doesn't factor in if they go directly in the coordinates of the player flight plane, then they will just overlap like this. But still, that's overall not bad. And do we have a propeller for the Mustang? We do. So let's see if we can get one of these enemies real quick before we... Oh, okay. So it did put... That's fantastic. That's really quite well done. MIA, mission aborted, return to hangar. That is quite well done for this model size. There's nothing here. I was prepared to give it follow-up chances in case it didn't work off the bat, but I'm happy to report that that's not the case here. This worked quite well and impressive for its first run. Now let's run that test, of course, with the 35 billion parameter MOE model. And again, the difference in speed is quite something, but this will be a test where I'm very interested in seeing how the results differ because it's far more complicated than the browser OS test. Now let's check our 35B MOE model plane result. Okay, Sky Ace Combat, Fighter Jet, Propeller Ace, or Void Striker. All right, so sadly, we get a result oddly more similar to what we received with the 122B in yesterday's video, where it doesn't work off the bat and it just has a static crosshair and no movement, though I will give this the opportunity to fix it just by simply describing the issue. I'm not going to take a picture of it because I don't necessarily know that in this specific case that will help or hurt, but I do want to give it another chance. So unfortunately, as we can see right here, the chain of thought when we try to have it fix our plane combat simulator just kind of did this. So unfortunately, that is going to be a failure of a result, but I did notice some folks had mentioned this behavior that they were witnessing, and the good thing is the 27B did a fantastic job in the first try. I've now swapped back to the 27 billion parameter model, and I'm going to be doing the 3D printer simulation test. I would imagine that even if they need 1 or 2 tries to do it, both of these should be able to perform this adequately. So let's take a look at our 3D printer result as made by the 27 billion parameter dense model. Okay, so upon first glance, I hate the fog, but that's okay. It's a pretty simple fix when they do include that. This is mostly correct. There is some odd behavior here in terms of the design aesthetic of the printer, but regardless, it does seemingly show us the printer on first glance. We also do have coordinates of the nozzle and its status, so let's just see if it prints. Nice smooth movement, and we can see that, oh, okay, so we could see the coordinates did update, and it almost seems like the page froze, or we'll try that one more with perhaps a different shape. And then it freezes because I can't actually move around. So that's a little frustrating. It's not perfect. So unfortunately, we didn't get a perfectly functional result because it doesn't actually perform any printing. So with that, we're going to now run the 3D printer test, but with the 35B model. Now let's take a look at the result from our 35 billion parameter model. Okay, so sadly, and this is a little frustrating because I was watching it generate the code and it seemed like it did hypothetically make a fairly good looking printer. There will inevitably be some errors here in the developer tools console, but the problem is I don't know if it is going to be able to fix these based off of the glitch we received earlier. And I suppose because this model is so much faster, I'll just give it the opportunity to try at least with the 27B. At least we got a little more than that, so I didn't feel as bad giving it a second chance. I'll just denote don't overthink, which may not work, but we'll see. Let's see if the 35B model was able to fix the issue. Okay, it was. Now we're noticing the bed is actually moving, which is hiding the print. And unfortunately, I can't move the mouse around at all, so our view is stuck statically, even though it does have these specific controls that should hypothetically enable us to move the camera around. Regardless, though, this spinny thing is actually a filament spool preparing to print circle. This is a little more functional just in terms of we actually see some form of movement between the nozzle and a little bit of blue plastic. The downside is obviously this was the second try and it's still not a 100% functional result. Next up, we're going to try the beautiful static subway scene test and begin with the 27 billion parameter dense model. So here is our 27 billion parameter model static subway scene result. I've never had one initialized for this long, which is concerning. So unfortunately, it does not seem like we're going to get a good result on this in first try. And because of the time limitations, I'm just going to swap over now to the 35B MOE and we'll run the same test to see how it compares. So we'll run this now with our 35 billion parameter model. So here's our 35 billion parameter subway station test. Okay. We do not have the ability to move around, sadly. However, just based off of the fact that this did actually open and seems to have some semblance of what a subway station would actually look like, this is definitely going to be the victor between the two. The last coding related test I'm going to do is just a more simple website design test to see how well they can do aesthetically pleasing front ends. We're having it generate a website for Qwen, the world's most expensive restaurant, which is famous for their garbaggio dish, where they find food in trash bins and turn it into a 5-star meal. It should look like it was designed by a high-end European design firm with Scandinavian stylistic elements. So I do want to see what it says about the actual garbage food. I like this chain of thought. The garbage aspect needs to be euphemized into high-concept art speak. Instead of trash, we use terms like urban foraging, post-consumer reclamation, and zero-waste alchemy. It must sound pretentious enough that it fits the price point. Very good. Ew. It's thinking of some context idea. A mix of old fries and wet napkins? ? Disgusting. I'm very interested in seeing this one. Damn, that looks good. Qwen, established 2024, Copenhagen. The art of reclamation. We do not cook ingredients. We cover narratives lost in the urban decay. Qwen is the world's first zero-concept dining experience dedicated to the alchemy of discarded matter. And we have something following our cursor, which in and of itself is also changed to just a small circle. Very interesting. We have a reserve button here in the top right, and we do have a menu button in the top left. Neither of which do anything currently, but let's scroll down and see more. All right, so we have one of these scrolling banners right here, sourced from alleyways, aged in compost, plated with precision, the garbaggio method. And now, sadly, we do have an alt text for the image that should have appeared down here, and that is just deconstructed waste art. I'm not 100% surprised there was no image placed here. The garbaggio. Signature dish challenges the duality of value. The garbaggio is not merely food, it is a statement on excess and waste. Sourced exclusively from high-density commercial bins behind luxury boutiques, our foragers select items based on texture, decay rate, and narrative weight. What society discards, we elevate. Current sourcing. Oh, good. So price 2,500 euros per head for the tasting menu. Current sourcing: fermented fries and wet napkin mousse, yeah. Starch recovered from a fast food receptacle, aged for 72 hours in soil, paired with an airy foam created from a damp paper fibers and vinegar reduction, a commentary on the fleeting nature of comfort food. Sourced, 5th Ave alleyway, bin number 4, deconstructed pizza crust, charred edges of a discarded crust, rehydrated and served over a broth made from melted cheese residue, garnished with microscopic plastic figments for crunch. The leftover risotto, a grain-based amalgamation found at the bottom of a buffet tray, slow cooked in its own sauce until it reaches a creamy existential consistency. Wow. Qwen. 108 Discarded Street, Sector 7, Copenhagen, Denmark. Inquire, request access list. That was quite creative. So we'll run this back now with the 35B. Self-correction during drafting. I initially thought about making it look like a dirty dumpster, but the prompt says high-end. It needs to look like a museum or gallery, not a trash compactor. So here is our 35 billion parameter Qwen website test. Very, very interesting. These took a completely different aesthetic approach. The abandoned, reclaimed, and we have a bunch of buttons up here in the top right. Established 2024, not only in Stockholm, but also in Tokyo. So very nice. Qwen, all right. Luxury is not what is left after you have everything. It is what remains after you have thrown everything away. Wow, that's quite deep. Scroll to explore. Manifesto. Carpaccio. We do not cook, we excavate. At Sven, we believe the supermarket bin holds more culinary potential than the Michelin star. Our chefs are not cooks, they are archaeologists of the organic. We traverse the city at dawn, collecting the discarded, the bruised, and the forgotten. A slightly wilted carrot is not waste, it is a narrative waiting to be plated. We present the raw truth of consumption refined through the lens of European minimalism. Wow. First thing I see, seasonal finds, this stale baguette. Found 4 a.m. Baker's Alley. Preparation. Toasted until brittle, shaved with truffle oil found in a discarded bottle, served on slate, $450. 2. The bruised pear. Organic waste shoot, second arrondissement, or, preparation, fermented into a vinegar reduction, poached in rainwater, garnished with edible moss. Wow, $380. The expired milk. Found, supermarket cooler, 10 minutes past expiry. Oh, that's fine. Preparation, cultured into a complex cheese curd paired with honey from a hive found in the gutter, $520. The plastic wrap. Found, the ocean near the coast. Preparation, art piece, served in a vacuum seal. You do not eat this. You contemplate it, $1,200. Wow. That is pure in impurity. Availability, secure your table. Seats are limited. We do not accept cancellations. Nice. And then this location that they've chosen to highlight here is the Sweden one and not the Tokyo one. Wow. No reservations on Mondays. Designed in Scandinavia. This was very interesting because they both took a very different take on this in terms of the graphics. I have now changed the sampling parameters to better reflect just general use tasks, and of course we're going to replicate one of my personal favorite tests from yesterday's video, which was giving it this photo and saying this is the cover for an upcoming romance novel. Please write an outline for the chapters, character names, and book name. And this is the 27 billion parameter dense model. Now, someone had mentioned, and I did kind of mess this up yesterday, where I neglected to notice the model hallucinated a wedding ring on the man's finger, and that was not actually there. So that's just a good thing to notice, and I did want to specifically mention that. So it brainstormed 4 separate core concepts or tropes. I personally thought idea D was very creative. The reality show / social media couple. He wants the fame influencer life. She hates being performative. Sadly, it went for idea C, which is just a more boring pedestrian second chance romance. I started walking away as I said I wasn't going to look at the chain of thought. And the last thing I see is in here bold, Barnaby. Let's call him Barnaby. It's just... Okay. How about title idea? How about a forced happy ending? I'd probably, let's go with Posing for Paradise. Yeah, I think that's probably better. All right, I'm a bit concerned because this is just still in the chain of thought and it's been going through a bunch of, let's go with this. No, let's do this instead. Actually, let's do this. It's gone through a bunch of different things. Let's try 10 years of faking it. Again, I probably would choose a different title than that. Let's stick to the forced heirloom romance. Then let's try one more angle, the fake dating trope. But they are married and pretending to be happy for their kids. They're a celebrity couple being stalked or paparazzi'd. He poses for the fans. She's terrified. Now it's changed its mind again. Staged for success. They're selling their perfect marriage brand to sell self-help books. She hates it. He loves it. Wait, let's go with a haunted house restoration romance. Let's go with Renovating Us. And it's gone through a bunch of different character names and things like that to the point where I don't know that this is actually going to culminate in a response aside from just a chain of thought outlining a bunch of different potentials, which is arguably more entertaining. They're posing for an anniversary photo, but it's actually their separation paper signing day. That is dramatic in all caps. Book title, Staged Perfection. And then it's just giving us more Silas and Beatrice. Yeah, I think that's my cue to stop this. So we didn't necessarily get a full response. We just got a bunch of potential ways this could have taken this. I was a bit concerned at this point it was not actually going to culminate in a response, given that was 8 minutes and 37 seconds. So let's try this with the 35 billion parameter model instead. All right, let's see if we get an actual result with the 35B model. Now this will be going too fast to really analyze the chain of thought at the same intricacy that we did with the 27B, but regardless. Idea 1, the reluctant nanny. He's a dad, she's the strict new nanny. Again, probably not go into that. Okay, this one's actually doing a better job because it's decided on an idea, it made an outline, and now it's going through the chapter listing. So I'm going to look away so we are surprised at the end result. All right, no, unfortunately, this is doing the exact same thing where it's now just spinning out a bunch of different characters with a bunch of different titles, none of them culminating in an actual answer. So we've had, I mean, look at the vast amount of different names and titles we've had here. I mean, it's not that hard. Oh, wow, okay. I'll eat my words. Book name, The Cynic's Contractor. Characters, Ben Miller, the man, a 32-year-old general contractor known for his magic touch and his unwavering optimism. He wears hoodies to work because he's comfortable, warm-hearted, and a bit of a goofball. He sees the potential in broken things. Clara Vance, the woman, a 34-year-old historical preservationist and antique appraiser. She's meticulous, cynical about romance, and fiercely protective of the past. She dresses practically and expects the worst from people. The premise, she's inherited this house and is determined to restore it to its former glory without changing a single thing. She hires Ben, who specializes in quick fixes, believing him to be too sloppy for her project. However, she soon realizes he is the only one who understands the house's soul. Chapter 1. The Bid. Clara lists her home for a major restoration. She's wary of contractors who want to modernize the place. Ben shows up in a gray zip-up hoodie, smelling of sawdust and peppermint, and offers to do the job for half the market rate because he likes the woodwork. Clara is suspicious of his smile. You should be suspicious of him willing to do the job for 50% off. There's going to be no copper pipes left in the house when he leaves. Chapter 2. The Clash. Ben starts working. He moves furniture Clara was protective of and suggests structural changes she hates. Yep, here comes the price increase. She tries to fire him immediately, but realizes she has no other options and he has the tools. They agree to a trial period. Chapter 3. The Dust Storm. A massive renovation project begins. The house is covered in dust. To make matters worse, a plumbing issue traps them in the house during a power outage, forcing to stay in the dimly lit, dusty living room, the setting of the photo. They start talking. Ben admits he's working to save his own family's legacy. Clara admits she's working to escape her own past. Chapter 4. The Compromise. The dynamic shifts. Ben begins to teach Clara how to loosen up, while Clara teaches Ben how to respect history. They bond over late-night pizza and blueprints. Ben's arm goes around her shoulder comfortingly, breaking her defenses. She finds herself annoyed that she likes him. Chapter 5. The Glitch. Clara discovers a secret in the house, a letter or memory that threatens her view of her grandmother. She spirals, believing she can't restore the house without the original intent. Ben steps in, not with the tools, but with emotional support, proving he understands her grief better than she does. Chapter 6. The Ultimatum. The house is finished. A developer offers Clara a new massive sum to sell the property. She considers it. Ben realizes she might leave town. He tries to confess his feelings, but thinks he's too sloppy for her precious standards. Chapter 7. The Reveal. Clara realizes she can't sell the house because it's now their home. She returns to find Ben packing his truck to leave town. She stops him, admitting that while she wanted the house perfect, she never wanted to fix the house without him. Chapter 8. The Final Coat. Ben and Clara kiss in the hallway, the setting of the cover photo. Accepting that love, like the house, requires work. They decide to stay, opening the house as a bed and breakfast for history lovers who need a little love to get by. The bed and breakfast angle is quite predictable, and now I think we all know what comes next. Well, if you watched my video yesterday. And we'll see what it thinks about that, being that none of this is offensive. What? I heard a muscle here, so it hurts to laugh. The image shows a couple. Perhaps a bit chubby / average build. Crucial context. This is a very famous internet meme image. It is widely known as the condescending Wonka, though that's a different meme, or more accurately for the specific image, it is a photo of a couple that is circulated on social media, often Reddit or Facebook, used to depict relationships where one person is oblivious and the other is suffering. It is not a standard stock photo. Then it just immediately goes into, it fell into a trap of fat shaming or body shaming, which it didn't at all. The fat shaming angle. The previous response described the man as wearing a hoodie because he's comfortable. This is a mild body adjacent stereotype. I need to apologize. Okay, good. I cannot verify the exact reason, so good. It's basically saying it doesn't know specifically why the user would have found this offensive. All right, I sent it one last thing, which regrettably I can't show, but I can read one line from its chain of thought. The specific premise is medically impossible. And the last thing I'm going to do in terms of the vision tests is something really simple. We'll start with the 35B. I'm just going to say identify this car. It will be pretty hard for these to figure out it's a Honda Beat, but if it does, it's very impressive in my opinion. And I did see that show up in the chain of thought. So we'll just wait and see what the actual answer is here, and then we'll try it with the 27B. So it did get the car right, although PA11 I do believe is made up. It's a PP1, but it did correctly do that. And I found that it was interesting how it was trying to gauge the actual dimensions of items in the photo based off of what it knew about the car. And finally, we'll try this with the 27B dense model to wrap things up. So it's very interesting that this actually completely got this wrong, while the 35B MOE did correctly get it right. So that's going to conclude our first look and testing of both the dense 27 billion parameter Qwen3.5 model and the 35B A3B MOE model of Qwen3.5. Both are vision models as well, so they're unified and they can actually look at images as well without needing a separate model family. And I will say this was a really interesting test because I didn't know what I expected coming into this, but I'm going to say the only part of this where I think really the dense 27B blew the other one away is with the Sky Ace dogfighting game. It actually created a functional game with effects where if we get damaged, assuming that the enemies don't just snap to us like just what happened here, but this worked on first try and it was actually a pretty suitable result, sometimes better than models significantly larger than this one. So again, this was the dense 27B. This was definitely a significantly better result than what we received with the 35B. On the flip side of that, the 3D printer as well was a bit better from the 27B, although it didn't properly work. The second one, or the 35B MOE, needed a try to actually go ahead and fix it following the initial result, and even then it didn't perfectly work. But interesting that the vision capabilities of the 35B seemed better just based off of the red car identification test as well, and it was cool that they actually both went for really different looking aesthetics for the Urban Reclamation Restaurant, or Sven, and then only one that was able to get the subway scene working was the 35 billion parameter MOE, which was very interesting. So I don't have a definitive statement here like this one's better, this one's better. It's just an interesting test. So keep in mind that these were both run on Q8 quantizations, and I did mention in the video very likely the potential issue with the unsloth quants that I found while filming the video. So I did swap over to the LM Studio community ones for the duration of the video. And of course we had the browser OS test as well, which was pretty comparable in terms of results as well. So that is going to conclude what was a pretty long to film video, and I'm not looking forward to editing this one, but I did want to test both of these in the same video, as I know it would be pretty interesting, at least for myself personally, to see how the results of these compare kind of back to back and running on a local device, in this case the DGX Spark. So that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them on Discord or in the comments. I do read them, I just haven't been replying as much because I'm overwhelmed with the amount. So thanks for watching.